The rain had been falling all day, a soft and steady rhythm that seemed to echo the weight in Daniel's chest. He sat on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the dim light creeping through the blinds. The world outside felt washed out, as if someone had painted everything in muted grays. He asked himself the same question he had whispered every morning for weeks. What's the point? Daniel wasn't someone he used to think like that. He used to laugh easily, throw himself into little joys. Coffee with too much sugar, humming along to songs on the radio, walking home under autumn leaves crunching beneath his feet. He was the guy who smiled at strangers in elevators, the one who held doors open without thinking twice. But lately life felt heavy like a fog he couldn't walk out of. Work was draining, friends seemed distant, and even the hobbies he once loved now felt like chores. It wasn't that anything catastrophic had happened. Sometimes, emptiness just creeps in slowly, like water seeping under a door. Daniel went through the motions: wake up, commute, answer emails, eat dinner, scroll his phone, sleep, repeat. The cycle blurred days into nights until he couldn't tell them apart anymore. That evening, after another long, lifeless day, he lay back on his bed and picked up his phone, scrolling mindlessly, hoping for a distraction. His thumb swiped over videos, images, and voices, all of them blurring together in an endless stream of noise. He barely noticed what he was seeing, until something small caught his eye. It was a short clip. No music, no words. Just a shaky camera capturing a little boy, maybe 6 or 7, standing in the pouring rain. He held a faded red umbrella, but it wasn't covering him. The umbrella was tilted, stretched awkwardly to shield a stray dog curled on the sidewalk. The boy's hair and clothes were soaked through, water dripping down his cheeks, but he didn't move. He just stood there, shivering, holding the umbrella steady so the dog could stay dry. Daniel froze. Something about that image, a child, drenched and trembling, caring for something weaker than himself, cracked open. A piece of Daniel's heart he thought had gone numb. His throat tightened, his chest ached, and before he realized it, tears blurred his vision. He didn't even know why. Maybe it was because the boy looked so small, so fragile, yet so full of love. Maybe because the dog's eyes, half closed in relief, mirrored the comfort Daniel had been searching for in silence. For the first time in weeks, Daniel felt something stir inside him, a warmth, a reminder. The next morning, Daniel took the bus to work as usual. The city rolled by in a blur of concrete and rain-slick streets. He leaned his head against the glass, thinking of that boy, that umbrella, that act of quiet kindness. And then, as if the universe wanted to test him, he saw her. An elderly woman stood at the bus stop, wrestling with grocery bags that looked far too heavy for her frail arms. The wind pulled at her coat, and the rain beat down without mercy. People passed by, heads bent, umbrellas angled to shield only themselves. No one stopped. No one even looked twice. Daniel's first instinct was to stay seated. It wasn't his stop. He was already running late. But then his chest tightened again, and he thought of the little boy in the video, holding an umbrella not for himself, but for a stray who couldn't ask for help. Almost without thinking, Daniel pressed the button, got off one stop early, and jogged back through the puddles. "Here, let me help you with those," he said, reaching for the woman's bags. Her eyes widened in surprise. For a moment, she seemed unsure whether to trust him, but then her shoulders relaxed, and she let him take the weight from her trembling arms. Relief washed over her face, followed by the warmest smile Daniel had seen in months. "Thank you, son," she said softly, her voice trembling with both age and gratitude. "You don't know how much this helps." Daniel walked her a few blocks to her apartment building, carrying the bags, as she told him little pieces of her life. How she used to be a school teacher, how she lived alone since her husband passed, how the world felt a little faster every year. By the time they reached her door, Daniel realized something. He felt lighter, not because his life had suddenly changed, but because for a brief moment, the gray fog had lifted. That night, as Daniel lay in bed listening to the rain tap against the window, something inside him had shifted. The world hadn't become brighter overnight, but the weight on his chest didn't feel quite as crushing. He realized that maybe, just maybe, the point of life wasn't always grand or obvious. Maybe it wasn't about chasing happiness like a prize, or waiting for something extraordinary to happen. Maybe it was as small as holding an umbrella over a stray, as simple as carrying groceries for someone who couldn't. But Daniel's story didn't end there. In fact, that single choice, stepping off the bus, lifting a stranger's burden, was just the beginning. Because the woman he helped, her name was Margaret, and Margaret had a grandson who was fighting battles Daniel couldn't imagine, and in ways he could never have predicted. The kindness Daniel gave so simply would circle back to him at the moment he would need it most.